Hello and welcome to this lecture on Adobe Illustrator by Eduonix Technologies. In this lecture we're going to be going into effects. This is the last one as far as the effects panels. And these are going to be the Photoshop effects, the ones in the bottom part here. So as you can see, I have a rasterized logo here. You can see it says image pixels and appearance. And over here I have a vectorized logo. I use the live trace to do that. Anyway, I wanted to show you what happens with these effects between a vector and a raster image. And the first one, probably the most common one you're going to be using, is blur. There's smart blur, which doesn't, it's just really good for fine-tuned blur. There's radial blur, which is exactly what it sounds like. It blurs things in kind of a disc shape. And there's Gaussian blur, which is a method of averaging. It's probably the one you're going to use the most. So I'm going to click Gaussian blur. Set it down to 3 pixels, and the first thing you notice is the rasterized shape is blurred a lot more. If I were doing this to just the vector shape, I'd want to set it a little higher. And as I scroll up, you'll start to see the difference. Obviously by this point, the rasterized shape is completely blurred. And the thing about blur in Photoshop, or in Illustrator, is that it uses a lot of processing and memory, so that the more blurs you have on something, you're going to make your workspace and your workflow a nightmare. But that's what blur does. And it's a raster effect. You can't expand it. If you do expand it, it just expands the shapes and it just keeps the blur. So let's take a look at smart blur. I should select something first. On a lot of these you will get this nice little preview panel. You can see the difference. Notice how the pixels are getting a lot smoother on the rasterized image when I'm using the smart blur. Also, look at the background, how it's kind of breaking it up into a gradient, multi-part gradient. I'll zoom out a little so you can see. As far as the bottom image, there's not much that will be done. We have some options like edge overlay, overlay edge, or edge only and overlay edge. I typically keep it on normal. Like I said, smart blur is a very precise blur, and it's good for like fine-tuning things. So we compare the two. Here's the smart blur, and here's without. So let's get out of blurs for a second, because those are going to be the ones you're going to use the most anyway. And let's take a look at artistic. Now when you click any one of these, it'll bring up all of them. Now I'm going to... Alright, so it took about 30 seconds. If you look down here, you have zoom controls. And what this is doing is creating an approximation of your picture instead of doing it live, because these things do take a while to process. This is a very low resolution, very quick approximation, and it's a wonder that we have this, because it wasn't in a lot of previous versions. I'm pretty sure, but it makes it a lot quicker so you can get an idea of what it's going to look like ahead of time. So that's colored pencil. You can adjust stroke pressure, get an idea of what pressure does. You'll see pressure on a lot of these. Paper brightness, just how much is showing through. Ink pencil width. And you have a lot of options here. Conte crown, crackliture, which is a pretty cool one. Crack depth, you can make it nice and subtle. Give it just a cool texture. And brightness, of course. I like to set this way up and depth way down. And spacing, depending on what look you're going for. You see there's a lot of different things there. Let's move on. Crosshatch, which is supposed to emulate cross-hatching drawing style. It does about the same as colored pencil. So really you have to play with these, and I'm just going to cycle through them showing you dark strokes. Diffuse glow, which is basically just a glow with a graininess. You turn the graininess all the way down, and it's just a glow. Turn it all the way up, and it's crazy static. Ink glow amount, pretty self-explanatory. Clear amount is the amount that the graininess takes away from the image. So anyway, just dry brush, and you can see a lot of these pixelate, but a lot of that pixelation is gone when you actually render these. So let's take a look at film grain, which is very much the same as the one we just looked at. Just playing with the slider so you can see. Anyway, you basically have these set up in the categories. You got your artistic, you got brushstrokes, distort, and sketch, as well as stylize. Which that's about the only thing you can do with stylize. But it is pretty cool. It's determining its own outlines. You just slide this smoothness slider, you can get all kinds of different looks. Edge width. So it basically creates neon edges. A few of the ones that I like are white paper. Fiber length turned down quite a bit. There's a stamp, which is just going to create a black version of this. There's other ways to do that. I wouldn't use that much. Graphic pen can be pretty cool. Once again, this is a rather low resolution image. You would use things like graphic pen, charcoal, anything that emulates painting, drawing. Use that with much higher resolution images. And perhaps if there's time I'll show you. But you get the general idea. If you know what a graphic pen looks like, if you know what charcoal looks like, they do a reasonable job of reproducing those things. So I'm just going to stick with things that are better for just any size image. We have stained glass. Now if I set cell size to smaller, border thickness to low, that would be for a lower resolution image. Light intensity. And patchwork is one of my favorites. Whenever you see relief, that's just how much the it's going to look like it's sticking out. So the higher, the more depth, and the lower, it'll be almost flat. You have texturizer, which is one of my favorites because you get to choose different textures: brick, burlap, canvas. And if you look over here, you have load texture, so you can load anything you want in there. Now normally I like to take texture and use a transparency blending mode. However, this makes it really easy. Also, you get to determine the lighting And that's the actual lighting on the texture. So I can load a texture here. And it's looking for PSD files. So if you wanted to get a bunch of textures and try them out, this would be the thing to do them in. The ones it comes with are kind of boring, but still pretty useful. Once again, relief makes things more in-depth, and scaling makes the texture smaller, which is pretty useful. So you can't do a lot of this on the fly with just a regular texture. We have things like grain, mosaic tiles, and so on and so forth. Just go through here and experiment with them. Halftone pattern is actually a pretty cool one. I should just show you that one. Pattern type dot, pattern type circle, and lines, but dots are going to be the ones used the most often. There's actually a way of creating a more exact halftone pattern, but we might get into that later. But you can just look up a tutorial online. Chrome is pretty cool. A bit better for higher resolution images. So there you have the artistic brushstrokes, distort, sketch, and those kind of effects. Hit cancel. So we've covered brushstrokes, we've covered distort, pixelate, sketch, stylize, texture. Now I'm going to go into, and we've also covered artistic and blur. So as you can see, it's pretty much all that stuff. It's emulating different patterns, effects, but if it's a brick pattern, for example, you can manipulate that to make it look like something else with the sliders, so don't feel limited to what the names are. But here we get into the really good stuff with the effects gallery. So aside from all those things, there's pretty much just rasterize left. I'll go ahead and do it to the vectorized one. Went into this a little bit. Screen is for web, medium is just medium, and high is for print typically. So click screen. This will make a clipping mask that makes your background transparent and anti-aliasing. If you click art optimized, it'll make sure that there's dithering and smoothness in the pixels, that they don't turn out looking chunky and all pixelated crazy. So when I go to expand appearance, that rasterizes it. There's more filters, and there's a lot of notes and some advanced rasterization options. We're going to get into that in a later video. The next video is the appearance panel and really working with it, really getting to know it. But thanks for watching, and play with the effects. Have fun. This is probably what it's all been working up to. So